All right, so we're going to take a deep dive into some pretty recent news about U.S. immigration policy. You sent over a YouTube video from First Post,
Mm-hmm.
and it's about a potential surge in arrests by ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, the agency responsible for enforcing immigration laws.
Right, right. Yeah. And the video, I mean, it like right out of the gate, it really jumps out at you.
Yeah,
This claim of a 627% increase in ICE arrests during Trump's first month back in office.
627%. That's a huge number.
It is.
And the report really kind of highlights Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen reporting over 20,000 arrests in just 1 month,
Wow.
compared to about 33,000 total under Biden's entire previous year.
Right.
So, is this a sign that, Trump is back to his hardline immigration stance?
I mean, it would certainly seem to align with, a lot of the promises he made during the campaign.
Right.
But what's interesting is that the video also, it kind of shows some conflicting information. So while the daily arrests are definitely higher under Trump, they haven't consistently hit that initial goal of over 1,000 arrests per day.
I see.
February's data actually shows a drop to less than 600 arrests per day.
So maybe not as straightforward as that initial 627% figure suggests.
Exactly. And, this is where I think things start to get a bit more complicated.
Okay.
The video brings in Jason Hauer. He's a former ICE chief of staff under Biden.
Okay.
And he actually accuses Nielsen of cherry picking data to inflate the numbers. He actually uses the phrase comparing apples to coconuts. Instead of comparing similar categories of arrests across administrations, right?
Yeah.
Nielsen may be comparing, say, total arrests under Trump to only criminal arrests under Biden, making the increase appear much more dramatic.
Oh, so you're saying she's potentially manipulating the numbers to fit a narrative?
Well, it's certainly, and it's a possibility we have to consider. We can't just take these figures at face value.
Right. This reminds me of something else that the video touched on, deportation delays. Even though the Trump administration, really promised these fast deportations, it seems like things are taking a lot longer than maybe anticipated.
Right.
They even interviewed some Peruvian migrants who had been trying to reach the U.S. for over a year, only to face deportation. Kind of humanizes the situation, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it really highlights the very real human impact of these policies.
Yeah.
And while, the administration kind of focuses on this image of swift action, the reality for a lot of migrants is prolonged uncertainty and just hardship.
Speaking of different perspectives,
Yeah.
there's another interesting point in the video. A surge in migration from north to south,
Yeah.
with Costa Rica becoming this new entry point.
Yeah.
And it really kind of challenges the idea that migration is just a one-way flow from south to north.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that migration patterns are complex and they're influenced by so many different factors.
Yeah.
And what's noteworthy here is Costa Rica's collaboration with Panama to manage this flow of migrants while still upholding human rights. The video mentions over 2,200 people have already made this journey.
So it seems like a more collaborative approach might be more effective than solely focusing on enforcement.
Yeah, that's definitely a perspective worth considering. Unilateral policies often kind of overlook the broader context and the interconnectedness of migration across borders.
Okay, so we've got this significant increase in ICE arrests,
Yeah.
though potentially inflated deportation delays despite promises of speed and this kind of unexpected southbound migration trend. What's the real story here? Is this all about public safety?
Well, I mean, that's the key question the video leaves us with. Is this truly about public safety?
Right.
Or is it more about, creating a particular political image?
Is the focus on tangible results and actual threats?
Right.
Or is it more about projecting a certain image of strengths, even if the data doesn't entirely support it?
Exactly. And that's where, you as the viewer come in. I mean, it's so easy to be swept up in the rhetoric, especially with, a charged issue like immigration.
Right.
But it's so important to step back, look at the information that's being presented, and just ask yourself, what's the real story here? What are the potential motivations behind presenting the data in a certain way?
Yeah, you're right. We can't just passively absorb this information. We have to really engage with it critically.
Absolutely.
And this isn't just some abstract political debate, right? These are policies that affect real people's lives.
Absolutely. And with that in mind, there's one more aspect of this video I think is worth exploring further.
Okay, let's hear it.
Remember that quote from Homeland Security Secretary Nielsen,
Uh-huh.
where she says that President Trump and this administration are saving lives every day because of the actions we are taking to secure the border and deport illegal alien criminals.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like she's presenting this as like a very black and white issue, good guys versus bad guys, right?
Exactly. But like we've already talked about, the situation is way more complicated than that.
Right.
And it brings up some really important questions.
Okay.
Like whose lives are actually being saved by these actions? And are there any unintended consequences or like hidden costs?
That's a really good point. Like, is focusing only on arrests and deportations really the most effective way to address, like, all the complexities of immigration?
Yeah, it's definitely something to think about. The video highlights how much the Trump administration is emphasizing enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
But are there other approaches that might actually be more effective in the long run?
Right.
Could increasing collaboration with other countries, like what Costa Rica and Panama are doing, offer a more sustainable solution?
This deep dive has really opened my eyes to all the nuances of this issue.
Yeah.
Like, we've gone way beyond just the headlines.
Yeah.
We've examined the data, thought about potential motivations, and even, like, glimpsed the human impact of all these policies.
And that's what makes this kind of exploration so valuable. Immigration is often portrayed in very simplistic terms, you know?
Right.
But the reality is much more layered. There are economic factors, social considerations, and of course the human stories, at the heart of it all.
It's easy to get caught up in all the political rhetoric.
Yeah.
But it's so crucial to remember that real people are being affected by these decisions.
Absolutely. And as we start to wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought.
Okay.
It's easy to feel overwhelmed by how complex this issue is, but your engagement matters.
What do you mean by that?
Well, like understanding the nuances of immigration policy gives you the power to engage in more informed discussions.
Okay.
You can ask those critical questions and hold your elected officials accountable for the choices they make.
So it's not just about being informed. It's about using that knowledge to actually make a difference.
Precisely. Your voice and your perspective matter when it comes to shaping the future of immigration policy.
That's a powerful message. And I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive.
Thanks for joining us on this journey. Remember, stay curious, keep asking questions, and never underestimate the power of your own voice.
Until next time, keep diving deep. It feels like we've, only scratched the surface here.
Yeah.
But this deep dive has given us a lot to think about.
It really has. I mean, we've seen how statistics can be, so easily manipulated to fit a certain narrative.
Right.
And how important it is to really dig deeper, consider different perspectives.
I've also seen how, these policy decisions, especially around something as complicated as immigration, they have very real consequences for individuals and families.
Absolutely.
And we've even explored the idea that maybe collaboration and understanding might be more effective than just focusing on enforcement.
For sure.
I think, the biggest takeaway for me is that immigration, it's not a simple issue. It doesn't have these easy answers.
It's multifaceted, and it requires a nuanced approach that goes way beyond the catchy slogans and the political posturing.
I totally agree. It's about recognizing those human stories that are behind the headlines and engaging in this thoughtful dialogue to find solutions that are both just and compassionate.
So what can our listener do with all this information? Where do they go from here?
Well, I think the first step is to, stay informed, continue to look for diverse perspectives, challenge assumptions, and ask those critical questions.
And don't be afraid to really engage in conversations about immigration, even if they're difficult or uncomfortable.
Exactly. Share what you've learned, listen to other people's viewpoints, and use your voice to advocate for policies that, that align with your values.
This deep dive has been really eye-opening for me, and I hope it's been the same for you, our listener.
Yeah.
And, even though this episode is coming to an end, the conversation doesn't have to.
That's right. Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep. Thanks for joining us.